This is Sarah Squires bringing you behind the headlines for today's edition of WyoToday Newsroom. Today, I am so lucky to be joined by U.S. Representative Harriet Hageman. Welcome to the show.
Well, it's good to be back with you on this beautiful day.
Sure is. So since we last spoke, Representative Hageman, you've announced your run for the Wyoming U.S. Senate seat, currently held by Senator Cynthia Lummis, who announced she won't run again. I'm wondering if you can kind of unpack your decision, what you kind of weighed when you considered whether to pursue that spot.
So, we've had a great leader in Cynthia Lummis in the Senate, and I think that it's very important that we have someone who is ready to provide the same kind of effectiveness on day one. I have been in the U.S. House for 3 years now. I think, the very best staff on the Hill. We have worked hard for the constituents in Wyoming and making sure that we are furthering Wyoming's interest in everything from energy production to ag issues to, just basically fundamental freedoms and pushing back against the incredible overreach that you get out of Washington, D.C. The Senate is really not a place for on-the-job training. And again, with the experience that I bring to this, I think that we're going to have kind of a seamless transition between Senator Lummis and myself. I want to continue working with and fighting for the same agenda that President Trump is attempting to implement back here. And so many of the bad policies that affect Wyoming come out of Washington, D.C. in light of our federal footprint, in light of the energy issues that we have, the NEPA challenges that we have, the permitting challenges. And I just think that it's very important that we have someone in the Senate who knows how to fight back against those. As you know, for the last 20 years of my legal career, a lot of what I did was pushing back against unelected bureaucrats, the EPA attempting to designate irrigation facilities as navigable waters of the United States and things like that. So I have a very deep understanding of actually how Washington, D.C. works and how these agencies works. And I think in the Senate, we're going to be able to stop a lot of the bad policies that come out of here.
Well, it's interesting to hear kind of your internal, dialogue as you sort of weigh these things and the impact that you might be able to have in the other chamber. So we'll definitely be keeping an eye on the election news and how things progress with that. Now, I wanted to sort of turn the page to what's been happening in Minnesota in recent weeks. And I think, there have been, folks on the left who've been upset about ICE activity in Minneapolis and surrounding areas in Minnesota and other places in the country. But after the Alex Pretti shooting, I've definitely noticed a shift in the conversation. Of course, Alex Pretti was shot in Minneapolis by an ICE agent and killed while legally carrying a concealed carry firearm. And initially, we had a kind of a statement that came out of the U.S. Attorney's Office in the District of California that pointed to the fact that he was in possession of a handgun while approaching law enforcement as a reason that maybe this would be justified. And of course, the NRA fired back on that, calling the statement dangerous and wrong. And I want to tell you, Representative Hageman, that something that I've observed here on the ground in Wyoming is a bit of a turning point locally. So, we've seen, just like a lot of places, some small protests pop up that were generally taking aim at President Trump's administration. But since the shooting of Alex Pretti in Minneapolis, we've seen a bit of a shift with protesters demanding the defense of our Second Amendment rights, and more moderate folks are joining in on those protests as well. Now, if I were to assemble a team of the smartest people that I know when it comes to the U.S. Constitution, Representative Hageman, I think that you would be on that list. And so I think our listeners are hungry to hear your perspective on what this shooting means when it comes to our constitutionally protected right to bear arms. What should we be thinking about when it comes to the shooting of Alex Pretti, and what should be happening now? What is happening now?
So first of all, I'm going to break a bit with some of the statements that came out of the White House and the administration related to Alex Pretti. First of all, that is a terrible tragedy that never should have happened. And I think everybody feels that way, including the White House, including this administration. There isn't a circumstance any circumstance under which this administration wants that kind of a situation to develop and happen. So I'm sorry for the family. I have actually had contact with a gentleman who knows that family, who is just heartbroken by it, and we all are. Alex Pretti had the right to keep and bear arms under the Second Amendment. There isn't any doubt about that. He had the right to carry a gun. But what I'm going to say for many of the people who are in Minneapolis is this is not a grassroots type of situation where people are just out there, protesting in the streets and saying this is the wrong thing to do. This is highly organized, very, very, very well funded, and it is an attempt to prevent our law enforcement and ICE to prevent them from enforcing immigration law. It's that simple. I think that immigration and what we saw, the open borders under the Biden administration, I think that was intentional. I think that the Biden administration literally broke our immigration system, and now the President Trump and the Republicans are having to try to fix this and clean up this horrible mess. So it is when you've got people who are out there interfering with ICE, and I don't know what happened with Alex Pretti. I have said this over and over and over again. There needs to be a full investigation by the state, by the feds, by the locals. It's whoever wants to be involved in that investigation should have an opportunity to do that. There needs to be a full investigation, and if someone made a mistake, if someone did something wrong, they should be held accountable. I have been very clear about that from the beginning, but I am going to repeat what I have said over and over and over again. In the United States of America, we revere the rule of law. And the rule of law includes that you do not interfere with law enforcement under any circumstance. And they are interfering with law enforcement in Minnesota. They're doing it intentionally. And they have escalated the situation, the people who are supporting this, the people who are funding this. They have escalated a situation where terrible things have happened and are going to happen unless cooler heads can prevail. I believe that Tom Homan coming into the situation and attempting to get control of it is a very positive thing, a very good thing. I do think things have de-escalated since he met with the leadership in Minnesota, but they have de-escalated because the leadership in Minnesota has finally agreed to not continue down the road of the sanctuary cities where they are allowing criminals out of the jails when there are ICE detainers for them. You don't see this happening in most places around the country. You see it in Seattle. You see it in Portland. You see it in the radical leftist enclaves in this country, such as Minneapolis. And you see that. You don't see it elsewhere because elsewhere they are cooperating with ICE. And if they pick up someone who is illegal and they put him in jail, whether it is for a DUI or spousal abuse or carrying a firearm, whatever it might be, illegal, then they are turning them over to ICE as they should. It is in these communities where they are refusing to do that, and they are actually elevating the rights of the criminals over and above the safety and security of their own citizens, and it needs to stop.
Well, thank you for being candid and sort of going over your thoughts on what's happening, in Minneapolis, other parts of the country here, and what we can expect to come. I'm hoping that, what you described as some de-escalation there continues that trend. I think that we would all, be happy to see the tensions lowered and ICE able to do its job and people able to be, safe on the streets of Minneapolis as well. Now, one other issue, of course, I wanted to touch on here, I think maybe I've seen a little bit of reporting on this, but not a whole lot, has to do with a bill that you've introduced that would essentially amend the IRS code to revoke the tax-exempt status of organizations performing or funding abortions. Now, Representative Hageman, what can you tell us about this bill?
Well, it doesn't make any sense that we would use essentially tax money to fund organizations that perform abortions. I believe it's a violation of the Hyde Amendment, if not in actuality, at least in spirit. And the point being that money is fungible. It really is. Money is fungible, and they can argue, well, we don't use that money specifically to provide abortion services, but if they have funds that they can then use for operations. They can use other money for abortion services. And I just don't think that the majority of people in the United States believe that if you are performing abortions, you should have tax-exempt status. Tax-exempt status is for true, legitimate charities. And so I just think that it is wrong that we have a circumstance where we have given tax-exempt status to abortion mills. That isn't the right thing to do. Most people don't want their money to be used that way. And so it's just kind of a simple fix that they shouldn't be tax-exempt if they're performing abortions.
All right. Now, late last month, Representative Hageman, you joined your congressional colleagues on an amicus brief that supports President Trump's executive order ending birthright citizenship. And I'm wondering if you can just sort of unpack what this means, what we should be thinking about when it comes to this issue.
So I think that the idea that we would have birthright citizenship for anyone who arrived on our shores and had a baby and then went back to their country, that baby would be a citizen of America is really an absurdity. There is no other country on planet Earth that believes that has that kind of a mentality. And I'm going to just give you a couple of examples that we have uncovered where this is happening, and I think that it really kind of brings home the idea that it is absurd to interpret the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment was never intended to address birthright citizenship the way that it has been implemented in this country for the last 50 to 60 years. It was specific to slavery. It has nothing to do with you arriving on the shore, arriving in America, having a baby, and then automatically having citizenship for that child. We have uncovered the fact that the Chinese, we have a surrogacy business in this country, and Chinese nationals are hiring surrogates in the United States to have their babies, and then they're picking them up and taking them back to China. But the moment they're born, they all have American citizenship under the expansive interpretation of the 14th Amendment. We don't yet know how many, but it could be in the tens of thousands that we are seeing, if not more, of this surrogacy situation. Where this really came to a head was during COVID. Many of the folks who had hired surrogates and paid women here in America to carry and have their children, they could not get here or chose not to come to America to pick up the children. And so these children were literally abandoned in the United States during COVID with this situation going on. So all we're saying is that the 14th Amendment should be interpreted and enforced the way that it was intended, to make sure that it is identifying citizenship for the people who are actually legitimately here, but coming here and having a child does not bestow citizenship on that child.
All right. Definitely one to watch. So I think that a lot of folks are talking about and have been talking about the release of the Jeffrey Epstein sex trafficking files here related to this case over the past few months. Excuse me. There's been what appears to be some mounting outrage here on one particular topic, and that is that other potential co-conspirators don't appear to be facing legal consequences here in the United States. Yesterday, of course, U.S. Senator Lummis, after reviewing some unredacted versions of these files in the case, said, quote, "Now I understand what the big deal is." Now, Representative Hageman, can you give us some perspective on your reaction to the files, your involvement in this? I mean, are you in there using the searchable database and looking up things yourself, or are you getting, reports on important topics that are being released as they come out? What are your thoughts on this?
So I have voted I think at least 2, possibly 3 times to release the Epstein files, both through the Oversight Committee as well as the bill from last year to release all of the files. And that is the bill, both under the Oversight Committee's work as well as that bill. That is the reason why these millions of pages of documents have been released. And I have said over and over again, anyone who was engaged with Jeffrey Epstein and doing these kinds of nefarious acts should be held accountable. I have not been looking at the files. I know a lot of people have, and information has been being released. I'm looking at that with great interest to see what kind of next steps there needs to be. But I'm going to say what I've said earlier, which is I really, truly believe in the rule of law, and I believe that this needs to play out. And if there are things in there that someone could be held accountable for doing really bad things, then I think that they should be held accountable. But the system is going to work.
Mm. Now, from your perspective, with what we've seen thus far, Representative Hageman, do you feel that the ultra wealthy, the elite here that we know are in the files in one context or another, that they have been somewhat insulated or protected here, or do we not know exactly yet?
I don't think that we know. I don't think we know the answer to that. I don't know why Jeffrey Epstein got the deal that he did in Florida, many years ago, which was basically allowed him to, it was just essentially a get out of jail card. He got a little bit of a slap on the wrist. I think he had to go and spend a couple of nights in jail, but that was the extent of it. I don't know who negotiated that or why. I obviously was not involved in any of that, and I'm not involved in any of this. I'm going to say it again. If there is evidence that are other people who engaged in the same kind of behavior, they should be prosecuted. Ghislaine Maxwell has been, and if there are other people that have, I think about Alan Dershowitz, and Alan Dershowitz has got caught up in this many years ago, and someone accused him of engaging in this kind of behavior, and he ultimately sued that person for defamation. And she retracted the allegations against him. And what he has said over and over again is there are a lot of allegations out there that are not true. And that's why I think that it is inappropriate to rush to judgment as to who and what information is included in those records until that has been vetted. And I'm just simply not going to do that. I think Jeffrey Epstein was a despicable human being. I don't know what all kinds of behavior he was engaging in. I think he was a creep. I think that he did really bizarre emails to himself. I don't know if those emails were true or they were just simply him ruminating on what was going on in his twisted little mind. I don't have the information for that, and that's why you have to allow the prosecution and the system to work its way through. I don't know if anybody is being protected. I think Jeffrey Epstein was. I don't know why. I don't know why they did that in Florida. I don't know why they took the route that they did. Ultimately, he paid the price. He went to prison and ended up dying while there. But I don't know if there are other people who engaged with him. I just don't have that information.
So what do you see as the next steps, or how can we reach that ultimate place of justice that I think we all want to reach?
I don't know if anybody is ever going to be satisfied with the nature of the justice that is eked out here. I think that there are people that there is a full gamut. There's a very broad spectrum of what people believe happened and who engaged and who participated. The Clintons are going to be coming in and they're going to be giving a deposition, each of them, to the Oversight Committee. I think that's a good step in the right direction because Bill Clinton happens to be one that we do know shows up extensively in the Epstein files. You've got the photographs, the photographic evidence. You've got his own admissions that he was flying on his plane with him. We have his own admission that he was traveling extensively with him. So I think we need to start with people like the Clintons. I think throughout history, they've been able to skate on some pretty nefarious activities. Maybe this is what will finally take them down. You've got the picture of Bill Clinton in the blue dress that was in the Epstein house in Manhattan condominium. So, I think that's one of the places that they're going to start, and we'll have more information after they have done the questioning of the Clintons. But I don't know who else would be in those files. I do know Stacey Plaskett is in those files quite extensively. Stacey Plaskett is the Democrat representative in Congress from the Virgin Islands, and she was one of Jeffrey Epstein's fixers. She was one of his attorneys. She engaged with him extensively, asking for donations, asking for his support. I think that people have seen the photographs of Epstein and the president and think that they were besties. I found out yesterday that President Trump actually called the police on Jeffrey Epstein in 2006. So we know for at least 20 years, the last 20 years, they've had no interaction. And he passed away quite some time ago, but they weren't the besties. Epstein was a leftist. He was a liberal. He was a Democrat. And I think that that's where you're going to see there's going to be more things uncovered there. But again, I just have to wait to see what is exposed.
Yeah. Well, I think with just the sheer volume of documents that were released, it's bound to create more questions and answers. So hopefully it won't take too much longer for us to reach a point where we feel that some greater sense of accountability and justice has been had. I want to thank you so much, Representative Hageman, for joining us this morning, filling in the folks here in Fremont, Hot Springs, and Washakie counties on the work you're doing on our behalf up in Washington, D.C. and here at home. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Sarah. It's good to visit with you.
Definitely. Thanks. Today's show is brought to you by Porter's Mountain View Supply. If you're looking for a better way to relax, especially after a long Wyoming day, stop by Porter's Mountain View Supply in Riverton. Porter's offers quality hot tubs built for comfort, durability, and year-round enjoyment. Whether you want a place to unwind, ease sore muscles, or spend time with family and friends, their team will help you find the hot tub that fits your space and your lifestyle. Porter's Mountain View Supply is known for friendly, knowledgeable service. They take the time to answer your questions and help you understand proper care and maintenance so you feel confident long after your purchase. Check out Porter's Mountain View Supply at 750 East Sunset Drive in Riverton or give them a call at 307-856-6000.